So you have a whole series of Torah that talks about us emulating God and God's behavior. So here comes the question. If God is so infinitely and beyond infinite, remember when you talk about Atzmos, built the Metzias Nimtza, beyond anything in existence, beyond any definition. And here we have a world full of definitions. Shabbos is Shabbos and Sunday is Sunday. Pesach is not Shavuos. What is Asr Mamish Daraisa? On Pesach, a day later, you could eat chametz. So we see clear boundaries and distinctions and structures. Mitzvahs, once a day passes over Yom Batal Karbana, you can't bring a carbon the next day for 2 days. In other words, the structures and boundaries of time and space and details, in addition, of course, to the whole structure of existence. So you could argue the whole structure is just an illusion. It's all about connecting to God, defying the structure. But that's not the case. Allah is Allah. The same God that is beyond all structure created structure. And He wants us to elevate that structure and connect it to the divine. So how do you explain that? So you could say we don't explain it. It's Kabbalah sale. God can do anything He wants. But God wants us to understand His process. Ata hareisa ladas. You, good God, as the Alter Rebbe teaches, Atzmus Ein Sof Hareisa, revealed yourself for us to know you. To know you. He gave us a Torah, He told us to learn Torah. Learn Torah, you used to have to use your Seichel. So you could argue, you know what, we use our Seichel as much as we can, but Ein Lanu Esek B'Nistaris. We don't know the secrets. But God revealed also some of the secrets. Not all. Obviously, God always remains God and is beyond us. So how do you explain that? That's where the Torah comes into, and Kabbalah comes into play and talks about this. What's going on? How do we connect to this God? So that's where the Kabbalah reveals, which is also part of Torah that was given at Sinai. That Basarim Amoris Nivra Elam, the Eibishter created the world with 10 statements. Not one. Even though Breishis Nami Maimerhu, but He created the world with 10. Because he created the Yemer Elikim Yehi Oyer. Elikim says Yehi Oyer. And Yehi Rekia. So He created a structure. The divine words define that structure. Those words originate from the 10 spheres. And there's sources in Kabbalah and that, in the Sefer Yetzirah. We say it in davening, L'cha Hashem Agdula Gvurat Av Tiferes, V'Netzach, V'Ahed, etc. There are psukim that talk about Lukfedi Barosav Yitzartev Afasisiv, that there's a world of Atzilus and Bri Yitzirasi. This is all Torah. This is not human understanding. The Torah gave us and explained to us that God created what's called a Seder Ishtalshus. In simple words, the Seder Ishtalshus is for us to understand the process of how God creates it to the extent that we can understand it, and the process of how we reconnect to the divine. So we begin. First we are a yesh. You're an entity, a self-contained entity. You feel your physical reality. But then you come through contemplation and through avodah, you come to realize, 1 second, something created me. There's a divine energy within me, a neshama. There's a divine energy within all of existence. Every species, every grain of sand, every snowflake, every flower, every leaf has divine energy within it. But the divine energy is omnipotent, is indivisible. So Kabbalah explains the divine energy chose to diminish itself, to conceal itself. Not the divine essence, the divine energy. So there's Mamala Kalaman, there's Seviv Kalaman. I don't want to go through the whole picture, but briefly, this is actually part of the godly divine system of creating what's called an interface. So the divine, even though the Eibishter loy Adam hu, but He created the idea of, He manifested the energy of the divine, manifested in the tzir of Adam. It's called Salmeinu Kidmusenu. We know the Eibishter has no tzelem and no dvus, but He created a world called Atzilus where there's a divine image. That world is contained Eres v'Kelim, just like we have a neshama v'guf. We have Keiches HaNefesh, faculties that go into each part of the body, the power of vision in the eye, the power of hearing in the ear. The same thing in Atzilus, Eres, and Kelim. So now, when a simple person davens, a child, doesn't know all this Seder Ishtalshus. So it says, go straight to Atzmus. Obviously, a love, you don't even have to tell him Leila Midesov, because he doesn't know what the Midas are. He doesn't know all these attributes. He goes straight to the essence. But that's a child. But as we grow older, and we have the intelligence, and we learn, and we start realizing there's more going on, and we want to permeate our lives, not just pshittas, Kabbalah sale. That would be great, but the fact is we also have faculties, and the Eibishter wants a dira b'tachtenim also within our faculties, within our very being. So now, how do we do that? So the Eibishter gave us a tools. Align your attributes, align your faculties with my attributes. Mahu chanun afata chanun. Attached to my midas. Not because the midas are an end in itself, it's something for you to hold on to. And as Chassidus explains at length, what says in Kabbalah, this is the dilemma. So how much of it relates to us? How much of it is divine? So generally, the Eid is more reflection of the divine within something. The Keli is more something that has parameters and relates to us. One is more the divine hafla se'ein, so expressing the divine awesomeness, which is necessary because you need to know it's divine. The other relates to us. So in these stepping stones throughout Ishtalshalis, there are levels that relate more to us and the divine is more concealed. There are levels where the divine is more revealed and the structure is more concealed. But you need both, the interface to be complete. You need existence and its structure, and you need to align that with the divine. And hence you come to the different opinions in Kabbalah. Do the spheres, are they the kelim, the structure, or are they the oir, the energy? When you daven, we're always davening a love, but the question is, what does this say love? What exactly is that level? So the part of this says the level is Eiris and Kalim. Not the Kalim themselves, the Eiris and Kalim. The Baal Shem Tov comes and based on that Izal, who says the Kalim is the main thing where the Shemas are, not in the Eir, because all the Eir is Shem Havaya, and explains, that Tzemach Tzedek explains, as the Rebbe cites in the Maimer, is the Sheirish HaKalim. In other words, the names, when we say Tzvois, where God is dealing with the enemy, what is it referring to? The structure of the divine as it manifests in structure, or is it as the divine as it's a reflective of the divine energy? So the Pardes would say is the energy, because Kabbalah is mainly Giluyim, transcendence, the divine within it all. The Baal Shem Tov is Mechadish, Chassidus Klolis, that it comes also into the structure of existence. That the very structure, you have a divine dimension in it. That's the root of the Kelim. Comes the Alter Rebbe and says in the Pirush HaPoshet is Atzmus. Nimna HaNimnois. So the Rebbe in Tovshim and Beis, I mentioned, Yud Shevat, said the Alter Rebbe is coming and bringing the other, if he didn't bring the other two interpretations, no. But he brings them both and then says the Pirush HaPoshet, almost like negating them. So the Rebbe says no. The Alter Rebbe is saying, Fakert, that after his Bonanus Chassidus Chabad in the Pardes and in the Baal Shem Tov, you come to the Maskana that it's really the Pirush HaPoshet, there's Atzmos, Poshet from two ways. Simple interpretation, like the simple Jew praying to the Atzmos, but also Pshittas, that's beyond definition. Because at the end of the day, how does Atzmos manifest, whether in Eid or in Kalim? It's true, it's not Atzmos, but it's a reflection. But you want to say Elav Leila Midesov, that the Midesov of the Eibishter are connected one with him. How is that possible? So at the end of the day, you need Nin Hamnim Nois. And the Rebbe says, so even those that don't know the Ramak and the Baal Shem Tov and all the Kavanas, so they are mechavan straight to the source. But when you do know, so you could think it's a different interpretation the Ramak is talking about Eir, the Baal Shem Tov is talking about Kalim, Sheirish HaKalim, and that's not like the Pirush HaPoshet. Says the Alter Rebbe, no, that's also the Pirush HaPoshet. But it's the way you climb a ladder, step by step. First you connect to the Eir. First you recognize that you're davening. You're not davening to God giving you bread or giving you parnasa or refuah. You're davening to the godliness. What godliness can a person relate to? I don't yet know. Atzmos is beyond me. So first come to a point of feeling transcendent. Feeling not a kayesh and a keli, feel like the Eir. Connect to God's divine Eir. Like we say, Asher Kedeshanu b'mitzvaysev v'tzivonu. The Baal Shem Tov goes deeper and says, after Asher Kedeshanu b'mitzvaysev v'tzivonu, you're connected to the transcendent divine. Now connect also to the structure. You say, Lahadlik ner Chanukah, ala chilas matzah, the different brachas we make with specifics. That's the keli. This is a specific way when we have to be mechavan to the specifics of this particular mitzvah. Because the kelim, also in the very structure of existence, also carries the divine. And then once you go through that, you come to the Eiris and the Kelim and the Sheirish HaKalim, you come to realize 1 second. All this is really Atzmos. Atzmos beyond all definition, because he created these different structures, these divine structures, in order for us to connect with him. So it's for on our terms. But once you go beyond that and you've gone through the process, comes Chassidus Chabad and teaches that it all is really Atzmos. It's all leading to Atzmos. All roads lead to Atzmos. Oir, transcendence. Same thing, Giluyim. The same thing with Kalim. Seva v'mamala. All lead to Lamayla Mayla Aden Kates, the Eitzer, which is beyond all structure. And that Atzmos wants Adira b'tachtenim. So then the day you have everything combined. You have the structure that allows us to connect. And then you come to realize that all that structure comes from a place beyond it, Nimna Nimnoyes, that can connect Iyu v'chayu, Iyu v'garmuyu, because they both need that connection, because they're both not Atzmos. So only Atzmos that's beyond any structure, beyond any definition, even beyond definition, can in turn connect a love with Midesav, can connect connect himself with the Eir, connect himself with the Keli. But it can only happen once you go through the whole process, step by step. First you have to relate to it in a way that's internal. When the Eibishter said to Moshe Rabbeinu, no person can see me and live. But then he says, Upana lo yiro, and that the Rebbe explains, the Panim Yotfis also explains it, that the Eibishter says, no person, you could see my back directly. You could also see my face by not looking. So when you go through the steps, and first you relate to a divine that you can relate to on your terms. It's not Ponai. And then you can relate to a next higher level of the divine, as the divine created the Tzimtzum and created the Rishimo and creates the Kalim, which is even a deeper level of divine, because the fact to create Kalim, a structure, takes more so-called divine, a deeper divine energy than just to reveal the divine. That Ramak is revealing the divine, the Baal Shem Tov is the Elokus within the Kalim, that infinite power within the finite, which is a deeper, because it's an infinite that's not expressive as the infinite in Giluyim, in Eir. Then you come to that which is beyond infinite itself, Atzmus, Elov Elel Medesav, the Pirush HaPashut, that's beyond both of them, and that's why he has the power to do both. The Avedis HaKedush says, just like you have the power in Bligvul, you have the power in Gvul. That would be, power in Bligvul would be like the Ramak, power in Gvul would be like the Kalim. And the Alter Rebbe comes and says that Gufa, that there's those powers, comes from a higher level of Atzmos. And that's when you can relate even to the face, by not looking. But it's when you go through the levels that you could relate to, you come to a point where you can experience the Atzmos completely beyond. So even though a child knows that even without going anywhere, but before you go through all these steps, it's very different. To say a child says, I don't know, it's different than someone who knows the Ramak and the Baal Shem Tovs and says, I don't know. Because that's an I don't know that comes informed, and your whole being has prepared yourself to reach that highest level. Okay. With that, we will, I'm going to stop here, especially the essays I'll do next week. So with that, let's conclude. Everyone should have a very meaningful Yud Shevat, Shivim Shana. Learn the Maimer, especially Perek Yud Aleph, and the Rebbe's explanations on it. I hope this was helpful. And most important, implement it. We have these deepest levels. So we have the levels that deal with every challenge, and the level of the Ramak, which means we transcend it through Eir. We have the Baal Shem Tov, that means we enter in it, and we realize that the challenge itself comes from a deeper place. And then we have the power of Atzmos, that means that the deepest levels of the Eitzer, of the treasures, from Netzach, that goes all the way to the point that is Mavazbis, all the treasures, the deepest treasures, Maila Maila Aden Ketz, and that all comes into Lamata Mata Aden Tachlis, into this world, and making a Dir B'Tachtein. Meaningful Yud Shevat, everyone.